Welcome in to the Lucas and Lucas podcast on a beautiful Halloween Tuesday. Lucas Frankel, Mike Lucas here with you. And Mike, we'll get to the fourth leading scorer in the NBA. I know everyone is chomping at the bit for us to talk about that guy. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Cam Thomas, baby.
33 points per game. Unbelievable. But we have to start with Mal. I assume you were sleeping. James Harden was traded at 2:06 a.m. Eastern time. This is one of those rare instances where we had left work and a huge story happened that we were not there for. So it was caught me off guard, caught seemingly everyone in the sports world off guard. The Clippers get James Harden, PJ Tucker, and someone named Philip Petrusev. And the Sixers get Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Nick Batum, Kenyon Martin Jr., an unprotected first-round pick in 2028, 2 second-round picks, and a 2026 protected first-round pick from the Thunder. And my initial reaction is, this is clearly what James Harden wanted all along. All we heard was that he wanted to go to the Clippers. And what, how does he have any trade value given what he's been through? And B, why would anyone go out of their way to give up real assets for James Harden at this stage of the game?
It's pretty simple. To his value, he has essentially none. That's pennies on the it's a bargain deal for James Harden. It is. First, they wanted Terrence Mann. The Clippers said, you're not going to get Terrence Mann. Then they said, all right, we want your unprotected picks. Well, they got OKC's unprotected picks.
No. They got a protected pick from OKC in 2026 and an unprotected one from the Clippers in 2028.
Then they wanted 2 first-round picks unprotected. They got 1. So this was essentially 50%, 33% of what Philly wanted back originally from the Clippers in terms of a James Harden trade. And it came down to this. It's pretty simple to me. This is obvious. It's plain clear. It's apparent. First and foremost, this is what's wrong with society, where you can bitch and moan and complain about whatever you want. And eventually, if you do it loud enough, you're going to get your way. And it's obnoxious. And it actually annoys me that James Harden ended up where he wanted to be. And the Sixers had to eat this because their player who got everything he asked for in Philadelphia was disgruntled.
James Harden?
He wanted to leave the Nets, go to Philadelphia. Go. You wanted to run the team? Go. You want to take the ball out of Joel Embiid's hands? Go. You want to be the focal point of a team that has a chance to win a championship? Go. And I guess what, it's not good enough. I want to go to Houston. I don't really like it here. Show y'all this team. It's not my team. I'm just going to complain and moan and complain.
That was never the issue, though.
It was.
The issue wasn't about whose team it was. Harden was offended because Morey apparently made this promise that he was going to give Harden a max and ended up not giving him the max.
And why did he not give him the max?
Because he saw that he didn't work hard enough. And
because he's not the face of the team, he's not the face of the franchise,
and wasn't the player that he was, when he was in Houston, winning scoring titles and MVPs.
Exactly. So he's not the face of the franchise anymore. So yeah, you could slice and dice, and you could look at any different direction you want to go. The reality is, James Harden was unhappy. Said, "I'm not going to show up. I'm not going to be part of this team. Trade me to the Clippers or nothing." And eventually, he got his way, and it's frustrating because it seems like that's just society in today's day and age. You could once again complain and be disgruntled and upset. And if you make it vocal enough and you make it a big enough issue, you're essentially, the Browns just traded DPJ to the Lions. I wonder if they're getting back. This is gonna be breaking news throughout this hour here. But the Browns have traded DPJ to the Lions.
That DPJ is Donovan Peoples-Jones.
Donovan Peoples-Jones to the Lions. No idea what the compensation is going to be. Here's the reality with James Harden, though. The Sixers didn't want him anywhere near their team, anywhere near their young players, anywhere near the culture they're trying to build with Nick Nurse and the rest of this organization. They said, we are better off getting 40 cents on the dollar for James Harden than having to deal with the actual repercussions of James Harden being part of this team. We'll give it away for nothing. They got nothing they wanted back. Yeah, it helps to get 1 first-round pick unprotected in 6 years. It helps to get a future asset, but they wanted Terrence Mann, they wanted Norman Powell, they got neither. And it makes sense to the Clippers because he's injury insurance for Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, and at least can help keep them afloat during the regular season. He's useless in the postseason. He's an absolute hamstring, and he ties your team down. He weighs your team down. He's an abysmal playoff player. You would not want him anywhere near a playoff rotation, but he can't help you win games in the regular season. We know Kawhi and Paul George don't play more than 55, 60 games tops in the regular season. So it makes sense for both sides. But I just hate James Harden. I'm so sick of talking about James Harden. If we never talk about James Harden again in this podcast, Frankel, I will be thrilled.
Well, we have a couple more things to hit on, at least from my perspective. Number one is we already saw multiple times the James Harden-Russell Westbrook duo And I believe they ended on horrible terms in Houston. I believe that at the end of that marriage together, like both guys wanted out. They wanted nothing to do with each other. Now all of a sudden they're back together, reunited, and I just can't believe that. It's almost insane to be like, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, and they're putting James Harden and Russell Westbrook back together. And how does anyone with a sane mind possibly think that that's going to work again? Again, not my problem, but just something that's clearly out there that we've seen before. And the other one is James Harden will now be on his fourth team in the last basically 2 years. Nets, Sixers, Rockets, and now the Clippers. In terms of how he will be remembered in history, I feel like Harden will be looked at as one of the biggest team killers, playoff chokers in like the history of the league. Like for someone as talented as he is, like when I think of James Harden, and I assume he'll probably still get in the Hall of Fame, whether wrongly or rightly so, he was that prolific in his prime with the Rockets that I don't think nothing pretty much he could do at this stage, aside from committing a serious crime, could probably take him away from the Hall of Fame. But how I'll remember James Harden will always be how he ruined teams and was one of the biggest team killers in the league. And when it mattered most, was never able to rise to the occasion.
One of the worst playoff performers of all time.
He's had great games in the playoffs, but yeah.
He's one of the few franchise cornerstones that can win you 55 games in the playoff in the regular season by himself, and then single-handedly lose you a playoff series in the exact same season. His highs were that high in the regular season, and when the postseason came, he shrunk to the size of a dingleberry. That's all I have to say. Browns got a 6th-round pick back for Donovan Peoples-Jones, by the way.
As the millions of listeners are clamoring to see what the return was for Donovan Peoples-Jones. Had he even done anything this year, Donovan Peoples-Jones?
He has 8 catches in 8 games. He's been essentially a non-existent non-factor.
Anyway, we'll get to the NFL in a second. The last one is, so now that the dust is settled for the James Harden, Ben Simmons trade. Ben Simmons, by the way, I watched a brief highlights of the game. I didn't get to see any of it because we had the World Series going on, football going on last night. So I didn't get to see too much of it, but I watched a quick 9-minute condensed highlight in double speed. And I watched some of Ben Simmons, and he only took 6 shots last night, 5 of 6 from the field. I've been scoring basically double digits every game with basically averaging at or near a triple-double, but not scoring, in that 15 to 20 range, closer to the 8 to 12 point range per game. But he looked aggressive. I mean, he's sensing those opportunities, getting some good offensive boards down the stretch. So when you look back on this deal, James Harden for Ben Simmons, who won the trade?
The Nets got assets back for James Harden. The Sixers got James Harden, did not win the title with James Harden, then just traded him for nothing. So I don't think either team could say they really won the trade, but the Nets are in a better position.
Fair enough. So in the NFL, monster trade ahead of the trade deadline, which is coming up in 55 minutes as we're taping this. Chase Young traded from the Commanders to the 49ers for just a 3rd-round pick. And I'm like so confused about compensation in the NFL because on Monday, the Giants got a 2nd and 5th-round picks back for Leonard Williams, who's horrendous.
Chase Young sucks too.
But has Chase Young not been that good? I know he was hurt. He's been hurt.
He hasn't been that good. He hasn't been healthy. And the thing is, you have to pay him. He's in the last year of his contract.
Well, so is Leonard Williams.
Yeah, and I guess the Seattle Seahawks look at this as a guy who, with the proven track record he has, is more averse to signing another contract than Chase Young. Listen, we talked about Chase Young on the show today. Sucks not the right word. He's been hurt. He's been inconsistent. The Commanders did not pick up his 5th-year rookie option, which is extremely rare for a 2nd overall pick. They were clearly willing to move off him. So anyone who was trading him either A, as a rental, which knocks his value down, or B, with the intention of signing him to a longer-term deal, which then also knocks his value down because the money comes into play.
So in your mind, who deserves to be worth more, Chase Young or Leonard Williams? You really have to think about this?
I think Leonard Williams right now is a better player, yeah.
No, he's not. That's laughable. Leonard Williams had one good year in his contract year, and ever since then has completely fallen off a cliff. You should know this as a Giants fan. He's been terrible.
Chase Young has done nothing. Chase Young, like, listen,
Chase Young's had 5 sacks in 7 games.
Donovan Peoples-Jones, 6th-round pick confirmed.
The biggest news of the day.
Listen, I'm getting text from people just making sure I'm on. This is what happens when you're a newsbreaker in Cleveland here. So,
in case you were wondering, biggest news of the day, it's leading the shows all around the nation. Donovan Peoples-Jones traded to the Detroit Lions for a 6th-round pick. Blockbuster move. Let's talk about this from a fantasy perspective. You have Jared
Makes
Goff.
No sense. Makes no sense. No. But like I don't know, Chase Young has been a non-factor in Washington. He's been a non-factor. So I don't watch enough.
Hang on. I'm done talking about Chase Young. We have to talk about Donovan Peoples-Jones being traded to the Detroit Lions.
You want to hear the stats on DPJ? He's run 205 routes and been targeted 15 times this year. The quarterback playing Cleveland sucks, but he is just simply not open. They drafted him as a 6th-round pick 3.5 years ago. They got a 6th-round pick back. That is a phenomenal return on investment for Andrew Berry in this front office. So kudos to them for recouping an asset that was essentially blocking playing time from Cedric Tillman, who they drafted in the 3rd round this year to be his replacement anyway. So kudos to Andrew Berry, but not a single person gives a crap about DPJ. He couldn't even get.
I just got a message from a Detroit Lions fan. Does this mean I should trade Amon-Ra St. Brown because Donovan Peoples-Jones is now going to be the number 1 receiver for the Lions? So Lions fans are asking, Mike.
In classic Browns fashion, DPJ would turn into like the second coming of Randy Moss in half a season in Detroit. That'd be perfect. That would be perfect.
Yeah, I'm looking at Twitter right now, and the number 1 trending thing on Twitter right now is Donovan Peoples-Jones. So it is exploding. The trade is 100% official. 2025 6th-round pick.
Huge.
In 4 seasons, Peoples-Jones has 117 catches for 1,837 yards and 8 touchdowns. Originally a 6th-round pick by the Browns in 2020. I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that. So, again, the breaking news here on the Lucas and Lucas podcast, Donovan Peoples-Jones traded to the Detroit Lions for a 6th-round draft pick in 2025. Just massive value and a massive, massive turn of events here on NFL trade deadline day. Meanwhile,
hey, to your credit, real quick, back to Chase Young and Leonard Williams. I said I've watched 1 Washington game this year, but Brandon Thorne, who does a lot of lineman stuff, offensive and defensive lineman stuff on Twitter, said Chase Young's playing the best football of his career this season. Hard to understand why no team was willing to give up more than a 1/3 for him. So maybe you're totally right, Frank, and maybe I just haven't watched enough. But essentially, he has not lived up to the hype of a 2nd overall pick. So.
Well, I feel like he was, and then he got hurt. He was like doing great, and then he got hurt, and has never really like maybe gotten back into that groove that was the reason why he was such a high draft pick to begin with. But like I said, I can't say I've watched too much of Commanders football, just because they haven't been super relevant, basically in the time they've been together, or he's been on the team really. So, elsewhere in the 49ers, so the 49ers going into their bye week. They were 5-0 after 5 weeks, looked like the clear class of the NFL. Since then, they're only a half game ahead of the Jets if you're looking at record-wise. The 49ers are 5-3, the Jets are 4-3. Mm-hmm. I think Brock Purdy is incapable of taking the Niners to where they want to go. I think and then listen, we could be looking back on this take in a month, but I don't think Brock Purdy is the answer to the 49ers quarterback issues. I'm not saying Sam Darnold is either, but it might be worth at least seeing what Darnold can do in this offense with Debo, Kittle, Ayuk, McCaffrey, and sort of maybe just expect, because I guess once you do it, you can't go back. But Purdy, this stretch of football has been absolutely horrendous. I know he was concussed and whatnot, but he is not getting it done by any stretch. He was Mr. Irrelevant for a reason. It's not like he was this, highly touted guy. Obviously, people want to point to Tom Brady, 6th-round pick. Yeah. But like Brady was a great athlete. And I think if Brady was quarterback of Michigan, in 2021 versus, 1999, 2000 range, I think he would probably have been a 2nd or 3rd-round pick as opposed to a 6th-round pick, just based on the numbers and whatnot he was doing and social media age and whatnot. So I don't believe that Brock Purdy is a guy that the Niners can count on to lead them to where they want to go. Do you? And listen, he obviously has a track record of success leading them to
the playoffs. It can change, yeah. Well,
but I'm just not high on it, and I think that the quicker they can get off that train, and the better it'll be for them.
Their first loss was to Cleveland, and this was 3 weeks ago now. And during that time, we did a whole lead-up segment to the game, Deshaun or Purdy, because we still thought Deshaun was going to play. We didn't know he wasn't going to play to the last minute. Brock Purdy coming in, obviously hadn't lost yet. His stats were unbelievable. And I went back and I watched a ton of tape on Brock Purdy trying to figure out what he does well, how to present this, yada, yada, yada. And he didn't miss. And I only bring that up to say, in basketball, sometimes when you're in the zone, you could take some terrible shots and they just go in. And you can't really explain how, why, what, when, or where you are in that moment for these things to happen and continue to go right. But he was making some bad throws and dudes were dropping picks. He had 10, this is before week 5, 10 passes this season tracked by PFF that should have been interceptions that were dropped. 10. That was the most without an interception at that point in the season. I don't know what the numbers are now. He comes into Cleveland. It's a rainy, crappy day. They lose. He doesn't play very well. They score on the opening drive. They drive down the field on the last drive. They should have won that game. Their kicker missed a 40-yard field goal at the buzzer, but they lose. And then next week against Minnesota, he gets concussed in the second half, and he throws 2 picks after the concussion. And then he didn't look right against Cincinnati to me at all. So I'm not ready to write him off yet, but I do think there are severe physical limitations on what Brock Purdy brings to the table as an NFL quarterback that he will never be able to overcome. He's a great processor. He reads defenses quickly. He's a great anticipator, but he does not have that cannon to rip balls into tight windows if the offensive line and the protection isn't there. And them losing Trent Williams, and Trent hasn't played since the Browns game, has been a massive loss for them. They don't have Debo. And these are all things that helped him be successful in that 11-game stretch prior to Cleveland. And since then, without the perfect conditions, without the perfect offensive set with the weapons and the receivers and the backs and kind of everything going well, we've seen Brock Purdy have to carry this team in a way he wasn't asked to previously. And I don't think at this point he's capable of that. And it's not mean he'll never be able to, but at this point, I just don't think he's ready. I don't. He's still good, but he's definitely not great.
Yeah, and maybe we're overreacting in the sense that they haven't had Trent Williams, who is, I mean, arguably one of the best left tackles in the league, and Deebo Samuel, one of the most electrifying playmakers, has been an absolute bust in fantasy for me this year. But those two guys are major difference makers to the offensive side of the ball. I see him and I see his body work, and I'm just not super optimistic that he's the guy. Anyway, the guy who's
we're quick on Purdy. I'll go back. I'll send you the all-22 from their game against. It was the one before Dallas. So he was perfect against Dallas. The week before that, he was equally as good. Some of the anticipation throws he makes, Frank, are stupid. Like 1, 2, 3, plant, throw it. The guy hasn't even broken out of his cut.
Arizona
field. It's either Arizona or
the Giants. It was the Giants before that.
No, that was Arizona then. But whatever, I'll send you the all 22. But he was making some throws. You're like, this is a prayer. He's throwing before his guy's even taking the step before his cut. And it's landing right in his chest with 2. It was almost so good, it was impossible to continue at that pace. That now he's reverted back below the mean, and it's probably somewhere in between. But to your point, can he carry a team by himself? I don't think so. I think he's a guy that needs, like a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL, he needs a lot of things around him to go right for him to be successful. And when it is, he can be damn good. But by himself, I don't think he's a guy that's going to lead you to the promised land by carrying and putting a team on his back like Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen. That level of quarterback can.
Yeah, and when you're playing from behind, and there's like stats to back this up, Purdy's just not a guy who can, when Mahomes is down, 14 points, we got this. I mean, granted, last week against the Broncos, maybe not the case, but most of the time when Patrick Mahomes is trailing, like you feel pretty good about your chances of winning. When Brock Purdy falls behind, it gets a little more hairy. One quarterback who is definitely not the answer is Tommy DeVito, who I don't know how much of this game you watched since now you're a diehard Cleveland Browns fan, but Jets Giants.
I went back and watched it after, and I'm actually upset I did. I'm upset I did.
So Tyrod Taylor leaves the game with a rib injury in, I believe, the second quarter. They put in Tommy DeVito, and I mean, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. In order to be on an NFL roster as a quarterback, like the amount of quarterbacks there are in the world that on an NFL roster is like, it's like absurd. It's probably like 0.001% of like guys who play quarterback end up on an NFL roster. Like you have to be insanely like best player, like in your like one of the best players in your state, like just an elite athlete. And to see a guy go in there a quarterback like Tommy DeVito and the coaching staff just having the least amount of confidence I've ever seen in my whole life watching football, just not trusting him to make a single throw down the field. Like, I don't believe he threw the ball more than 5 air yards down the field the entire game. Didn't even attempt. I mean, granted, it was a close game, and maybe if they were playing from behind more, they would have tried to see. But he gave you nothing. Like, that is like such a slap in the face. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not in practice. I don't go to practice. I don't see what's going on there. But the utter lack of confidence in him was unlike anything I've ever seen in my whole life watching football. How does he not even just like a play, like try one fake and just see what I learned nothing about Tommy DeVito in this game. And granted, the Giants still almost won the game because Zach Wilson couldn't, hit water if he fell out of a boat. But man, that was really, really hard to watch. And I'm just surprised that, a guy who is talented enough to be on an NFL roster doesn't even get the chance to attempt to pass on the field.
Here's my overall takeaway from that. And it's funny because, and I'm going to say something Cleveland related to bring it back. They're dealing with PJ Walker and DTR right now. And that's their third and fourth string quarterbacks. And it's been a disaster. They can't stop turning the ball over. It's been a catastrophe. They're 2-1 though. The defense has found ways to win. They're at least attempting to run a coherent, competent offense with a third string quarterback. The only time I could remember an offensive game plan being what the Giants ended up going with Tommy DeVito was that crazy wind game when the Bills played the Patriots and Bill Belichick ran the ball every time but 3 and they beat the Bills. And that was because weather circumstances. What Brian Daboll did, what Ken Dorsey did, or not Ken Dorsey, what Mike Kafka did, what the New York Giants as a football team did was play scared, was play terrified, was played in a way that is almost a disgrace to offensive football, Frankel. You're an NFL quarterback for a reason. If you don't trust your guy to throw any pass, then why the hell is he on your roster? Why? Give me one reason why this guy's on the roster. He's not like he's Mike Vick. It's not like he adds an element to this offense with his legs that you can't get or you don't already have with Daniel Jones or Tyrod Taylor. If you don't trust this guy to throw the football, what the hell is he doing on the roster? And I'm serious. We went through. He was 2 for 7 on the game.
-1 yards.
-1 yards. Their leading receiver in the game was Darren Waller, 1 catch, 4 yards. Saquon Barkley,
who left the game like the first quarter with a hamstring injury.
Matt Breida also had 1 catch for 4 yards. Saquon Barkley had 3 catches for 0 yards. The weather wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible, Frank, was it?
I mean, it was raining pretty hard, but I mean, you still expect, guys who are NFL caliber to be able to throw the ball on the field.
The fact that they didn't even attempt. Now, if they tried to open it up a little bit, and it was clear that he couldn't throw the ball, didn't have the arm strength, couldn't throw the ball, whatever, then okay, adjust. But the fact they never even gave him a chance to try, that's BS. And that's coaching scared. And that's actually doing more of a disservice to the players on that football team than it is helping trying to protect Tommy DeVito. It was a joke. And I'm actually glad the Giants lost that football game. They deserved to lose that football game. And it was a disgrace, maybe putting it a little too far, but it was a disgrace to football. It really was. The fact that you don't even attempt to pass beyond 5 yards with the guy who was on your roster. Yeah, you can play scared. You can play conservative, whatever. But let it rip. Try it once. You ran the ball 36 times with Saquon Barkley. Like, you know what throwing a deep pass does? You know what play action does? Like, if you don't trust him to do any of that, then why the hell is he here? So if he's here and you were comfortable putting him in the game, or not even comfortable, if he was the guy that you were all week saying, if Tyrod goes out, this is our backup plan, then you have to have a better plan as a head coach. And the fact you didn't, it pissed me off. It really does piss me off, man.
I mean, and listen, the Jets tried everything they could, everything in their power to give that game away. They had the offsides on the punt, which gave the Giants a first down. They allowed Saquon to run 35 yards right after halftime to set up the Giants in scoring range. And then there was another the third down where they sacked DeVito, and then the Jets got called for roughing the passer, which gave the Giants a 1st and goal, which led to the DeVito touchdown scramble on 3rd down later in that drive. And then the 4th down, Zach Wilson running around like an idiot and then ends up getting sacked. Doesn't even put the ball up for grabs, just takes a sack, loses 15 yards on a 3rd down long.
Yeah.
With just over a minute to go in the game. And it's like the Zach Wilson like said, what can I do to lose this game? And did everything in his power. The Giants still found a way to lose it. Just got the ball back with like 24 seconds left at their own 25-yard line. And just in 2 plays, we're down at the Giants like 12 to kick the game tying field goal to send it to overtime. And then they have spite. It was a whole thing in the office yesterday about the referee spying the ball. I'm not going to get like super hung up about that. The referees, they touched the ball. Like I guess they had to do, and backed away like everything was fine. The Jets spiked it with like a second to go, keep the field goal, go to overtime, and then the PI and OT sets up the win. I would have just eviscerated Robert Saleh, and if the Jets would have lost this game, because they like to lose that game with the way Tommy DeVito was playing would have been one of the biggest embarrassments as like a
ever.
And it's just you have to be so thankful that you find a way to win the game, just to like stay alive in the playoff race. Because at this stage, you're not getting any of the premier quarterbacks. You've already won too many games. They got the Chargers next up, Monday Night Football. I'm like afraid to start even Justin Herbert in fantasy in this game, because I think the Jets defense is going to really limit what he can do especially with the pass rushers they got, and Sauce shutting down Keenan Allen. And I just don't trust any of the other Chargers playmakers. Eckler will have some opportunities to get some stuff done. But aside from that, like, I have a really hard time seeing how Herbert's going to be able to move the ball down the field effectively against the Jets defense. I need to see more from Zach. Zach Wilson's got to show. They got to just throw it up to Garrett Wilson down the field more. Like, take some. Like, I was shocked the Jets didn't even just like try it. They were just playing so scared as well. And why not just like take a shot to Garrett Wilson? Like the F at Jamar Chase is down there somewhere. But go make a play. That's the same approach the Jets need to have with Garrett Wilson. Just F it. He's down there somewhere. Go make a play, Garrett Wilson, and stop with this whole check down crap. Throw the ball out on the field.
Yeah. The game was disgusting. It really hurt my eyes. There were so many punts. The offenses both sucked. It was abysmal. Like, frankly, the Jets won. I'm glad it's over. The Jets didn't deserve to win. The Giants definitely deserved to lose. So if there was ever a game where 2 teams could take a loss, that would have been the game. That should have been the game. It was disgusting.
You're in a fiery mood today. You immediately just destroy James Harden off the top. You're just eviscerating.
It's just.
Is everything okay?
Yeah, I'm just pissed off at I have some stuff with James Harden I can't tell you, so I'll tell you afterwards. But the whole. What's the point of having a guy on the roster if you're not going to throw the ball? Like, there's so many guys who I thought have been a chance to be good quarterbacks, to be solid, to be competent, to be anything, and then to have a guy Tommy DeVito come in,
Danny DeVito,
and like give him an effing shot, like just give him a chance. I'm more mad at Dayball than I am at DeVito. Like what's the?
There's got to be an emergency package of plays for when that guy comes that you can go to. It's not just like, oh crap,
but Frank,
he's in the game. What do we do?
He wasn't the third string this week. He was the backup. He was second string. You went in all this week knowing if Tyrod goes out, this guy's coming in. And you had nothing prepared, nothing, zero, zilch, nada. There wasn't one pass play where 5 yards in the playbook you felt confident calling with Tommy DeVito. Like, I do not. Let me calm down. I cannot fathom, and we're seeing the same thing in Cleveland here, and I hate criticizing coaches on play calling because there's so many more factors that go into it, and one play call doesn't make the game. But this wasn't one play. This wasn't like the Seattle-Cleveland game where the 3rd and 3 pass where they could have ran it, gets tipped, intercepted, Seattle goes down and score. This was an entire half and overtime of football where you did not have a single play you felt confident calling for a quarterback who has been in practice with you all season long, who you have seen practice every day this year, and there wasn't one in there that you felt confident calling? None? So what the hell are you doing in practice? How are you preparing? What are you doing to get this team ready to win? Because if you're telling me that your contingency plan, if Tyrod goes out, was to run the ball into a great run defense 36 times with Saquon, who had 128 yards. But he averaged like 3.3 yards a carry. It wasn't like he was super effective with it. And granted, you go run heavy, but
I was literally walking around the hallway at work thinking, like, I bet a good amount of money if you would have put me in there, I feel like I could have done just as good, if not better, as time. It felt like they just pulled a guy off the street to just be like, listen, we got nothing. Just hand the ball to Saquon Barkley and let's go home. Like, it's almost like they pulled the guy out of the stands to just put a uniform on and hand the ball off. No, and not a backup quarterback in the NFL is what it felt like.
Exactly. And that's what pisses me off. It feels like they just dragged the guy off the street to play quarterback. It felt like I was watching the San Francisco-Philadelphia NFC Championship game last year after Josh Johnson got hurt, and they had to put Kyle Juszczyk and Jawan Jennings and Christian McCaffrey at quarterback. And guess who had more yards in that game than Tommy DeVito did this week? All three of those guys combined, okay? So let's not pretend that you can't be creative and find ways to move the ball. Yes, the Jets defense is very good. Yes, the Giants offense isn't good to begin with. But for the love of Christmas, that can't be the dog crap that you subject me to watch for 65 minutes. Because 60 wasn't enough of that, Frank. Because a full game wasn't enough of that horrendous offensive performance. We needed overtime to remind us just how bad this offensive game plan was.
Well, the good news,
it's just despicable.
The good news is that Daniel Jones is likely going to be back on Sunday against the Raiders.
Thank God.
In Las Vegas, 4:25 on Fox. And Giants should probably win that game because the Raiders are an absolute catastrophe right now. And ever since Devontae Adams scored 42.18 points against me and beat me by 0.18, he's done absolutely nothing. So that's just the way that's just the way it works. And that's going to do it for this edition of Lucas podcast. We'll talk.
Sorry for getting so heated. I apologize to everyone out there.
No, I mean, listen, Donovan Peoples-Jones got traded. So you're all fired up. I can't blame you. And the Nets got their first win of the season, so there's a lot to be happy about. Cam Thomas is the fourth leading scorer in the entire NBA.
He's
30
awesome.
points per game. If the season ends today, he's the starting two guard in the All-Star game. So
he's been awesome.
Better get used to it. We'll see you next week recapping Giants, Raiders, Daniel Jones, Jimmy Garoppolo under the bright lights in Las Vegas. The stage is not getting any bigger. The home of the Super Bowl this year will feature Daniel Jones against Jimmy Garoppolo this week on Fox. Get ready.